Welcome to another episode of Shooting the Shift. I'm Nicole Magic, and this is my friend
Kristin Johnston.
And we are here today to bring to you a discussion on psychic abilities and tapping into that psychic sense. Whew, this is a big one.
One of our favorite things to talk about.
And so much to talk about. So, where do you want to start?
Well, psychic is such a loaded topic.
Yes.
So let's I think starting with like breaking down some of the myths associated with psychic, so that way we can kind of level the playing field and everyone can realize like we are all psychic. It's not just special people. I mean, some people might have a little bit more natural talent, just like someone might be a better sculptor than someone else, but it doesn't mean that they can't develop a skill. So let's level the playing field. Everybody's psychic. What are some of the things that jack up our beliefs around psychic ability?
Growing up and limiting beliefs, the beliefs around of people around us, how they instill in us, and the magical, the mystical doesn't exist. It's all fantasy.
Totally, yeah. Like I think when we're kids, we grow up knowing that we sense things around certain people, right? Some people make us feel really good and light. Other people, we might naturally kind of veer away from it, and yet we've got family members that will encourage us, oh no, go hug that person, or go, and so we start right away when we're little kind of shutting down our natural intuitive capacity. Energy is really our first language, and when we're little, and every other sentient being, every other living being follows the laws of energy. They don't question it, but because of human conditioning, we've been taught to consider our energy and our intuition second to our analytical mind, and so that analytical mind really gets in the way of our own natural innate psychic ability. And so we were talking earlier too about how comparison, which is a function of our analytical mind, comparing our psychic to someone else's psychic might kind of jam up our psychic system too, right?
Yeah, that could be based on a perception of what psychic is and how special it is, or just through all the years I've had so many people come to me and they're like, well, I kind of hear things, but I want to see auras like you do, right? And it's, well, maybe you don't, because there also is that other side where there are things that I see that I can't unsee. And it all depends on, what are you tapped into? And if you actually stop resisting the gift, the initial gift that you are given, or the initial gift that you recognize. So if you're hearing things, what does that mean? Tap into it more, accept it, develop it, because as you develop that, the other ones just follow, right? Because a lot of times I would see and I would hear. And then as I would tap into seeing and hearing since I was a little kid, then it was, I could feel so much. So then it was seeing, hearing, feeling, and then it was knowing. And then I could smell things and taste things. So everything just starts to unfold. So if we just accept what we have and develop that, the rest follows. And I can't stress that enough.
I completely agree with you. There's so many times you hear someone share their gift, and it's like this part of you is like, oh, well, my gift isn't gifty enough. I want my gift to be like your gift.
My gift isn't gifty enough. It's so true, right?
And then you're wishing that you perceived reality the way someone else did. The key is to tap into your own, your clairs. Everybody has a clair: clairsentient, clairaudient, claircognizant, clairvoyant. We all have those. So tapping into your own. So what are the ways that people can do that? What's the best way to start to activate your clair? Like the word psychic is of the soul. So getting into your own soul.
Right.
Do you think that that stillness or quiet or meditation, presence.
So it's not necessarily even like meditation where you're sitting there, all the stuff, or sitting there quietly. Presence, meditation, presence is a meditation in itself, right? So you can do whatever. You can, if you have trouble sitting still, and quieting your mind that way, because what is that? So I've had people tell me, well, I just see all these things. Great, tap into that. I'm a very visual person too. So when I meditate, I see all these things. I just get present and enjoy the light show instead of analyzing it, right? And it takes a little bit to get out of that analytical mode if you are naturally an analytical person. So, I mean, I worked in analytical chemistry, so come on, you know.
It's almost like getting beyond that part of your
Right.
brain that wants to analyze and function too, as opposed to just observe. And maybe you're the type of person who meditates or tries to get quiet and like doesn't
Yes.
have the light show, doesn't have the visions, and then thinks they're doing it wrong. Because again, that part of you that's like, oh, well, you know, I want it to be the way the other person does. Being present is just, it's being able to observe what's happening through your energy field, through your body, because
Right.
that is your psychic instrument. Your psychic instrument is like your body is your vehicle for your consciousness. And so most people would think that, oh, in order to get psychic, I've got to open up my upper chakras.
Ooh.
Wouldn't you say that the best thing to actually do, because that can be dissociative. You might
Yes.
actually start to go crazy if you're not
If
embodied.
you're not grounded. The higher you go this way, the deeper you go that way. It's kind of like roots of a tree, and how high can the tree grow without those roots? So you've got to be grounded, you've got to be rooted in order to expand in that sense, in a balanced, harmonious sense.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. So many people want to, we're especially in the spiritual community, especially in the shifting community, there's so much focus on the upper chakras. And it can create a lot of that, like that airy fairy energy that makes spiritual people appear dissociative or completely disconnected from
reality. A lot of times they
reality.
make no sense, because it's like, what carpet did you fly in here on? Can you come back over here so we can have a conversation? Right? Ground yourself a little bit.
What good are all of these psychic gifts if you cannot deliver them into the world, the third dimensional world that we actually exist on?
Right.
How can we bring in another dimension of consciousness if we don't know how to occupy the one that we're currently in?
Right. And I want to go back to that whole piece on people having different gifts. Tap in and become friendly with people who have those different gifts, because the awesome thing, and what I love about us and how we see things or feel things a little bit differently, sometimes we overlap, and sometimes it's very different in how we're picking up on things, is we add so much more to the element. Where if you come in, it's just like mediumship, right? I think people can relate to mediums getting information. Mediums get information in various different psychic and mediumship ways, and connected to the other side ways, where sometimes you'll hear things, sometimes you see things, and there's so many different planes and dimensions overlapping each other in just this space, or whatever space that you're in, that I might be tapping into one era, and you could be tapping into another era, and we're picking up on two completely different pieces of information. This has happened where I've been brought into areas, and it's like, I'm getting something completely different. But guess what? The EVPs were picking up what I was hearing. But that doesn't discredit what the other person was picking up either, right? And there's so many different things that you can add in, that I also was brought in on another area, very remote connection. It wasn't a physical being in this space. It was a remote space that I had to connect, like British Columbia.
Okay.
So all the way on the other side. And all the things that I was saying, I don't know. I was getting, I don't know is on the other side. I don't know. And that wasn't brought up by the other person. I said, that's okay. Doesn't matter to me. This is what I'm getting. I can only say what I get. And then somebody else was brought in, and then brought in the things that I said, and confirmed a lot of the pieces that I said separately.
So part of the practice then would be just like document what comes through for you when you're in that state.
Yes.
Write it down, even if it doesn't necessarily make sense. Just learning to keep track of the information that comes through, because a lot of times what stops us from learning to trust is that analytical
Self-doubt.
mind. It's like we human beings like to know things. It's like we like to control and predict, and developing your psychic is inviting you into a different space of consciousness that is the feminine, the intuitive, the receptive. We are presently we are a very masculine dominated race, and so we're very logical and analytical, and we discredit the information that comes from the unseen. Our ancestors, however, lived by that unseen. If they were in the woods and they were hunting and they got a feeling of danger, they didn't override that with their analytical mind. They trusted that intuition, and that's why some earlier civilizations lived in great harmony. The Native Americans knew how to really trust that flow, and again, that's all part of our psychic system.
Yep.
Our whole energy field is incredibly perceptive. Human beings are so very sensitive. So developing, really learning how to develop your sensitivities is it's a big part of being psychic.
You shield it with distrust. So the question is, how much do you trust yourself? How much do you trust yourself to make good decisions? How much do you trust yourself to accept and hear what your intuition is telling you? Because if you're not in that space, if you can't trust yourself yet, if you're in that space of a lot of self-doubt, a lot of distrust, and blocking your intuition, you're going to have issues developing that. So it really starts with tapping within, and where do you trust yourself? And then expand on that. Allow yourself, write it down like you said. Find a partner, a friend to practice with, because I can't tell you so many times that people came in and for a reading, and they're also not in the space of fully accepting, because a lot of times they have this preconceived notion of what this is going to be like, what they want to hear, and all kinds of stuff. And I've had people come in and, nope, can't take that. And I'm like, well, this is what's coming through so strongly. This is no doubt what's happening. So I'm like, all right, here's just the information, and you're free to take off with it.
So expectation, right? Really drop expectation of how any of your intuition is supposed to go. Yeah,
just allow it to come in, because countless times I would get a text, a call, an email after the fact saying, I know what you were saying now. It makes total sense. And that's all I would say is just, don't worry about it now. It will come. And it does.
And when people are open to it, exactly. Being open and being receptive is such a huge piece of delivering psychic information and also receiving it. You have to be an open channel. So
and symbols. The symbols are just crazy, because it kind of goes by what you're used to and what you know. So expand your knowledge on all kinds of different things. Visuals, symbols, whatever you can. So
archetypes, like the tarot, like those are symbols. They're archetypal symbols that speak to your subconscious.
Yes, and because when you see things, I was doing a reading for somebody once, and I kept seeing, like in the corner of the room, this lighted cross. And it was lighted, just like a white light cross. And I was asking, because it was pertaining to somebody's aunt. I'm like, was she religious? Because I keep seeing this cross. And it turned out she was a nurse. Now, had I seen a red cross or something, but that's the symbolism that came through. And if I interjected myself and fully said, oh, that means that this person's religious, well, okay, she can't take that, and I'm shutting down, we wouldn't have gotten to that space of, oh my God, she was a nurse.
I've often heard that, people will relate psychic to like charades. Like psychics are they're just getting the impressions. They're not always getting the backstory behind the impressions.
Right.
So like working with the psychic and getting curious and opening, okay, what could the symbolism actually mean?
You might see a necklace, it might pertain to a piece of jewelry. You may not be seeing that there's a significance to a ring, that you're seeing a piece of jewelry in your psyche.
Yeah, absolutely. Nicole and I were talking earlier. We both see auras, but we see them very differently. And that doesn't mean that the way she sees them is right and the way I see them is wrong, or vice versa. It's just how we perceive energy, or we're both very sensitive beings, and we've learned to develop this sensitivity and this trust. I don't always know exactly what it means when I see an aura. I just know that I'm perceiving the light body around that person, that there is something beyond the physical. Sometimes I will see little starlights around people, and for me that's just a symbol that there's spirit is around that person. I can't say, oh, that's your great aunt Mary or something. Another person who is very skilled medium might be able to do that. I've accepted that that's not the way that I work with spirit at this time. So really, like, lean into, you may just get a feeling. I've got a friend who can smell and taste. So if she'll go into an area, or say she goes into a building that used to be a bakery. This actually happened to her. All of a sudden, she was like, or it was a bakery at the time, she was smelling apples and tasting apples, and apparently it had been an apple orchard at one point. And so had she just discredited it or said, oh, well, that's just really weird, she never would have got curious, and that answer that, oh, this used to be an apple orchard, could never have come to her. So learn to develop your own intuition and practice different techniques. I know Nicole's got a really awesome technique, and she's been teaching psychic development and awakening your third eye for what, 15 years now?
Yeah, over 14 years, yeah.
Yeah, so she's got a really cool technique that she's going to share, and I'll share the technique that has worked really well for me for picking up psychic information. And we want you guys to try it out and then give us feedback. Does it work for you? And what are also let us know what your techniques are, so we can practice them and we can shift consciousness together. So you want to share what?
Yeah, I can share. I have to do this visual, so I'm going to take my hat off. But what we want to do is we want to cover the ears. So hook your thumbs where your chin is, and you want to, where your occipital is, right here, that little divot or whatever goes in, and you want to take these two fingers, and you're going to be flicking them, but covering your ears. And you're going to hear this womp, 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 womp sound in your ears. And you just keep doing that for, usually if you look at it as 27, whatever, nines. So 2 and 7 is 9. So if you do 27 to start, because you have to kind of get used to it, but you'll hear that womp, 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 womp. It actually activates your pineal gland and stimulates your pineal gland to start vibrating and bringing you into that space. I have had people come back to me and say profound, huge shifts and huge awakenings using that technique.
Oh, I can't wait to try it. We could do an experiment too. Try it for a certain amount of days.
Yeah,
and
let us know.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna apply that one. There's one that I've done pretty regularly, and I actually learned it through. It's a lot of Dr. Joe Dispenza's techniques. If you guys haven't looked into Dr. Joe yet, please do, because he is an incredible teacher of spirituality and science and merging the two, and he's fantastic. But so I kind of learned through his work, but also work that I had done long before, about the power of the energy field, and how once we believe that we're an independent, isolated being with a personality and an ego that needs to survive in a harsh world, basically what happens is this infinite field of energy that we knew when we were children starts to become collapsed. And so we use that energy to reinforce who we think we are. So now our energy field is limited to our body, our personality, and it gets kind of stuck in the lower 3 energy centers. And so the whole sensitivity of the field isn't quite as, its capacity for psychic information isn't as great. So I learned through Dr. Joe that if you pull that energy out of the lower energy centers and you redistribute it, you send it back up into the pineal gland and into the upper chakras, and you can kind of like rebalance your whole system. So what actually happens is the pineal gland, it has calcite crystals around it, and so it's a certain breathing pattern that when you do this breathwork pattern, the crystals, you put pressure on the pineal gland, and what happens is it creates a piezoelectric effect.
Yep.
So the crystals in the pineal gland starts to create friction, and it's almost like a spark or a charge, and it really actually
You'll hear
is.
that popping.
Yeah,
You'll hear it.
You have to try this. I'm telling you, you have to do it, and then you'll know exactly what we're talking about, because it's a visceral experience. So what you actually do is you lock down your lower energy center. So if you're a woman, like the Kegel, like you're pulling all your energy in and you're locking it up. So the energy, picture that the energy is no longer coming out through the root chakra. You're locking it up and you're taking a deep breath. And you're holding your breath up at the top of your pineal gland, and you're putting that pressure. You're almost doing like an abdominal crunch, but you're putting the pressure on the pineal gland for as long as you can, and then you release it and you send the energy back out, but then you do it again, and you're almost like bringing...
You're activating the Kundalini right there. There's a lot of Kundalini yoga methods that you're explaining right there too.
And if you look at our ancient masters, they practiced this stuff. That's how they got information. So the pineal gland, what it actually does, what it's for, is to pick up information from the field and to transduce it into images that we can then utilize. There's a field, a sea of information that exists all around us. It's psychic information. And the pineal gland that exists within the human brain it's a transducer. It's able to turn that information into images or into sensations that then we can learn to trust. But we have to be active. That means we can't only live under the illusion that we're separate beings. We have to restore our energy field to the way it was when we were born, when we were babies, before we got all jammed up by life. So these practices that Nicole shared and the ones that I shared, these are some of the tools that have worked for us to develop our psychic, to heal and balance our energy. And we would love for you to try them out and keep exploring yourself.
Let us know what your experience is.
Yes, and never stop asking questions or having conscious conversation that inspires you and awakens you and makes you curious.
Yes.
So don't forget, if you haven't yet, hit the subscribe button and like the video, and again, give us your feedback. Let us know what works for you, what doesn't, and where are you at in your whole shifting into higher consciousness.
And don't keep us a secret. Share us with your friends. Bye.